Kamikakushi is a Japanese word that roughly translates into hidden by God. This word is used when a thing, or more often a person, disappears in a way that can only be explained as an act of God, leaving no trace behind, as if they had simply vanished into thin air. In olden times it was thought to be the cause of evil spirits. Throughout history there have been many cases of Kamikakushi, and the story I will present to you today is a relatively recent one. In 2008, a young woman disappeared inside her own apartment. Security cameras saw her entering the building, but never leaving. Police would proceed to search every room in the apartment building, but could not find any trace of her. The media would cover this incident as a case of modern Kamikakushi, but the true story behind what actually happened to this young woman may have been worse than being abducted by evil spirits. This is the story of the Koutou apartment disappearance. Tojo Rurika, aged 23, had recently moved to the Koutou district of Tokyo with her older sister. Although Japan generally has a low crime rate, two young women living in a big city can pose unique risks, so they chose to live together in a new apartment, which had auto-locking features and security cameras in the entrance and hallways. As an added precaution, they chose a room on the highest floor of the building, assuming that living on a high floor would reduce the chances of someone breaking in. Every day, the sisters would text each other when they were heading home from work, and when they had arrived at their apartment. On April 18, 2008, Rurika sent a text to her sister, saying that she would be heading home soon. However, when the sister gets home, she cannot find Rurika, just her boots laying close to the door. The sister assumes Rurika had left momentarily for some random errand, but when hours pass by with no sign of her coming home, the sister begins to get worried. Upon closer inspection, she notices specks of what appear to be blood splattered across the wall close to Rurika's boots. At this point she calls the police, and the police immediately suspect foul play. Within the same day, police officers conduct door-to-door interviews for all residents of the apartment building. On the 9th floor where the sisters lived, there was only one other resident, a 33-year-old man by the name of Hoshijima. Hoshijima claimed to not recall any noises or anything out of the ordinary. The security camera footage was then reviewed, which showed Rurika entering the apartment but never leaving. The next person who showed up on camera was Rurika's sister. So between the time Rurika had come home to when she was found missing, no one had entered or left the building. It was as if she had simply vanished, a kamikakushi. Investigations would continue the following day. Because Rurika was never seen leaving, the police assumed she was most likely being held captive by one of the residents of the same apartment building. They also found fingerprints in Rurika's room that did not belong to either of the sisters. So, the police would again go door to door, asking for fingerprints and a quick search of all the rooms. They didn't have a warrant to do this, so the residents did not have to give consent to any investigation. But luckily for the police, every one of the residents were willing to cooperate. But even after this extensive search of the entire building, nothing was found. Rurika wasn't being held in any of the rooms, and none of the fingerprints of the other residents matched those found in the sisters' room. Around this time, the media would catch wind of this peculiar case, and would begin swarming around the apartment building. They interviewed some of the residents, including Rurika's neighbor, Hoshijima, who described how the police came to his doorstep and went through his room. Without being able to find any leads, the police investigation faded out over the following weeks, and it seemed as though the case would go cold. However, after a month had passed since Rurika's disappearance, a man was suddenly arrested. It was the neighbor, Hoshijima. The reason for his arrest being that his fingerprints matched those found inside the two sisters' room. Now, you may be wondering, didn't the police check the residents' fingerprints on the day after the disappearance and did not find any match? Yes, that was indeed the case, but the police had noticed that Hoshijima's fingerprints were damaged, as if he had suffered chemical burns. This was odd, as Hoshijima worked in IT and spent most of his time in an office. Not exactly the kind of work environment that would lead to burns on the palm of his hand. So the police had secretly suspected him, and after enough time had passed for his fingerprints to heal, They paid him another visit, and this time the prints matched those found at the scene of the disappearance. Hoshijima broke under police interrogation and would begin to describe his side of the story and what happened to Ririka. From a young age, Hoshijima was never popular with the girls, but he had always harbored a strong and twisted obsession towards them. He would read manga depicting dominating women, and he would even author his own manga illustrating his fantasies and sell them online. When Hoshijima noticed the two sisters moving into the same floor of his apartment, he felt the time had come to turn his fantasies into reality. His plan was to abduct one of the sisters and brainwash her into willingly doing his bidding. He chose to execute his plan on a Friday, so he would have the weekend to have his way with the woman. Hoshijima was confident that by Monday, he would have indoctrinated her to an extent where she would obey any order he gave. Therefore, there would be no problem in releasing her on Monday, as Hoshijima believed she would willingly come back to his room after work. When Ririka came home on the 18th of April, Hoshijima attempts to abduct her as she enters her room. In the following scuffle, Hoshijima was successful in kidnapping the woman, but he accidentally inflicts injuries to Ririka's face. This would be a problem, as even if Hoshijima was successful in mind-controlling her, people would ask what happened to her face when she went to work on Monday. As he was finishing tying and gagging Ririka, the police knock on his door. They were here for the initial questioning right after Ririka was reported missing. Little did the police know the woman was actually being held captive within Hoshijima's room as they were questioning him at the doorstep. After he had successfully deceived the police, Hoshijima knew he had to act fast. He dispatched Ririka with a stab to the throat, and then proceeded to dismember her body in the bathtub. He would cut soft flesh and organs into small pieces and flush them down the toilet, while storing the bones in cardboard boxes. To wrap it up, he would burn his fingerprints with chemicals, indicating that he had done at least a little bit of planning on how to cover his tracks. When the police conducted their voluntary search of every room within the apartment building the next day, Hoshijima let them in without hesitation. He even pointed to the boxes with Ririka's bones inside of them and asked the officers if they would like to check those as well. Because the police assumed Ririka was still alive and not in small pieces, they didn't bother checking the boxes. The fact that these boxes were lying around in plain sight may have made them seem less suspicious as well. Over the next few weeks, Hoshijima would break the bones into smaller chunks and mix them into his usual trash. As previously mentioned, he also answered interviews from the reporters who showed up after news of this incident broke out, confidently elaborating the details of the police investigation. He even claimed during the interview that, "I guess the police were suspecting me, but they found nothing." However, he may have let his guard down too much. Although he used chemicals to burn his fingerprints on the day of the crime, he didn't continue to do so afterwards, maybe because he felt the police would not come back. So when the police actually did show up and ask for his fingerprints again a month later, his fingerprints had fully healed, thus creating a critical piece of evidence linking Hoshijima to the case. If he had continued to tamper his fingerprints, he may have gotten away with the murder. During his trial, when asked of his motivations behind his actions, Hoshijima would answer, "I wanted a woman of my own," and claimed he didn't really care who it was, as long as it was a relatively young and attractive woman. He was sentenced to life and is still in prison to this day. A big thank you to Korbachu and my other Patreons for supporting this channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. As always, thank you for watching until the end. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you next time.